welcome to the Lost Media Chronicles, a show which goes over various lost movies, music, and in this month's case, video games! Yeah, there's not going to be a huge logo popping up or anything like that, because neither Trey nor I are all that great at Photoshop, and it's not really in the show's budget to hire someone to do it for us, so just use your imagination on that one, guys. That's right, for the entire month of May, which is my favorite month of the year, I'll be covering nothing but video game related topics. I've gotten tons of requests to cover video games, and I've always been a little bit iffy about doing them because they're so widely covered it isn't even funny. Everything I'm going to talk about this month has already been beaten to death by other great channels like Yuri of Wind, Digino Gaming, and my personal favorite, Gaming Historian. But I understand that some people still want me to cover these topics. So I'm going to make this episode's topic about one of the most popular franchises out there, Pokemon! Debuting in Japan in 1995, over the course of the next 5 years, the game took the world by storm. The concept of having 150 and now well over 700 individual monsters and battling them against opponents has captivated kids for over 20 years now. I grew up on it, you grew up on it, we don't need to say much more. Now before we get started, allow me to make this disclaimer. I'm only going to be covering the cancelled games and the early builds of some of the games that were actually released, as well as some missing content from those games. Pokemon, being the behemoth franchise it is, could easily cover several videos worth of material. So I will save the stuff from the anime as well as the countless removed Pokemon from early builds of the game out of this video. Though I will briefly mention them for one of the beta versions, which we'll get to. Both the anime and the removed Pokemon have so much information about them that you could easily make videos about those in and of themselves. Of course, no franchise starts without its humble beginnings. Pokemon was created by a man named Satoshi Tajiri. Inspired by memories of bug collecting from his childhood and seeing how the world was progressively becoming more urbanized, he wanted to create a game that would inspire children to go outside and explore again. Seeing the Game Boy technology taking off, with the link cable being a seminal part of the multiplayer experience for the system, Tajiri shot the idea to Nintendo, who didn't quite understand it at first. The series was originally named Capsule Monsters, and then got changed to Pocket Monsters, and then was stylized/shortened to Pokemon. After a somewhat troubled development process, Pokemon Red and Green was released in Japan in 1995, and eventually worldwide as Pokemon Red and Blue. The idea of releasing two different versions of the game was to offer players a different experience, and maybe even persuade them into buying both games, thus earning Nintendo even more profits. It's a tradition that continues to be followed to this day in the franchise. The games became a smash success, spawning a multi-billion-dollar enterprise and becoming one of Nintendo's flagship franchises. Naturally, this meant to many games being made to expand upon the success. Games were released on different Nintendo systems and many different ideas were pitched. Naturally, a sequel was in the works, with Nintendo and Game Freak announcing Pokemon Gold and Silver. Many would think that since the game was released in 2000 in the United States and in 1999 in Japan, that the announcement came about in 1999, but actually the first demos for Gold and Silver were shown at Space World Convention in Japan in 1997. As a matter of fact, the game was scheduled to come out later that year, but the developers wanted to make an even more immersive and amazing Pokemon game than the first one, so development was extended and the release was put off for another 2 years. The original tech demos from Space World differed greatly from the finished project. Some differences included Pokemon that would never be featured in the final version of the game, different designs for Pokemon that did, an entirely different title screen, Slowking appearing in the grass implying that the King's Rock was not needed to evolve Slowbro, an early version of the female character that would appear in Crystal version, the starting town being called Silent Hills, possibly changed to avoid being associated with the game of virtually the same name, and an entire forest area next to the starting town that was likely an early version of Ilex Forest. The early build of the game was only playable as a demo at Space World, and the only known footage to survive of it exists in a YouTube video covering it. No ROMs, which are files that are used to emulate console and arcade games on home computers, exist of this early build. Speaking of Gold and Silver, let's talk about the expansion version of that game called Crystal. Pokemon does this thing every generation that has one extra game that enhances the graphics, slightly expands the storyline, and overall smooths out the general gameplay. Well, in Japan, Crystal version was given a hugely significant upgrade. That's because Japan got an adapter called Mobile Adapter GB that connected your Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance to a mobile phone, allowing you to download content for video games on the system. Pokemon Crystal got items that were not available in the original game, as well as the ability to get updates and news from players who also use the service. In the Japanese version of the game, some Pokemon centers even had a separate area that utilized the adapter. The service shut down in 2002 after limited success with the adapter. The content is likely gone for good, as most of the cartridges the games were released on contained a battery that was only there to keep the time running and to assist in game saves. Those batteries would eventually die and therefore destroy all save data on the carts. Unless Nintendo releases the content themselves, this may never be seen again. Though some cartridges are known to last really long, so maybe some Japanese gamer has this data available on an old game of theirs. Now let's rewind a little and talk about another game that was developed for the Game Boy Color called Pokemon Picross. For the unfamiliar, Picross is a picture logic puzzle game using numbers. These nonogram games were hugely popular in Japan, and Nintendo planned on releasing a Pokemon variant. However, despite being promoted in multiple Japanese magazines, the project was quietly cancelled. Even more interesting is that on April 1st, 1999, Nintendo did release Picross NP Volume 1, which had 12 Pokemon-themed puzzles. It is believed by fans that this was what eventually became of Pokemon Picross. All that survives of the game are a couple of promotional pieces as well as a screenshot. Another game that was cancelled was one that fans were begging for from the beginning. There were tons of Pokemon games released for the Nintendo 64. The system allowed Pokemon to be viewed in a three-dimensional aspect, which many fans always loved. One game, though, was promising to be revolutionary for the series. Pocket Monsters RPG was first announced in 1997 by Shigeru Miyamoto. In the interview, Miyamoto stated that 3 different games were being developed for the N64, all using the same 3D models. These games were Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Stadium, and of course the cancelled Pocket Monsters RPG. It was intended to be used with the Nintendo 64 ill-fated disk drive. The disk drive allowed games to be played on discs and was simply an expansion for the console. Unfortunately, it didn't sell as well as Nintendo wanted it to, which led to many games for the console getting shelved. Pocket Monsters RPG was one of those games. Very little is known about its actual gameplay elements, and no demos, trailers, or even screenshots exist online. Of course, a Pokemon RPG did eventually make its way onto the GameCube titled Pokemon Colosseum, but fans still wanted to know what this early RPG would have been like, as it was actually developed by Game Freak. For this next one, we're fast forwarding a little bit to 2004. At E3 of that year, an expo that shows off new games and technology for the video gaming industry, Nintendo was showing off their new handheld console, the Nintendo DS. The DS had a touchscreen that allowed for further interactivity during gameplay. One of the tech demos that assisted in helping players understand the capabilities of the system is one in which the player uses the DS's stylus to play with the famous Pokemon Pikachu. Features included stretching Pikachu's body parts, drawing an image of him, measuring a magic heart that he catches, scratching off scratch cards, and playing the guitar and xylophone. What you are seeing here is all that is known to exist of this demo, just someone who filmed it at E3. Features of the tech demo made their way onto the Pokemon Dash game released later that year in Japan. Speaking of the DS was Nintendo's first system that allowed online connectivity. This allowed for online multiplayer, but also allowed for games to be downloaded as well. One of these games was Pokemon themed. The game, titled PokePark Azari Taikai, or in English PokePark Fishing Rally, involved fishing for water-type Pokemon at a river. The game had leaderboards and was fairly popular in Japan. Unfortunately, it would also delete itself off of the DS in under 12 hours, as that was just the nature of Nintendo's download-play games. No ROMs appear to have leaked of the game. However, YouTuber Tim Schuerwegen uploaded gameplay footage which indicates he might have had a ROM of some sort. Tim has yet to confirm this. Now we get to the famous Korean demo that was released for the PC for Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. Mystery Dungeon is another Pokemon spin-off involving playing as the Pokemon themselves rescuing each other. Shortly before Korea got the release of the game in 2007, there was a demo available that could be downloaded to the PC titled Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Gold Rescue Team Challenge the Gold Rank, an oddity for any Pokemon game ever. It had higher resolution and a larger screen size. Other details are scarce, but it's thought to not be far removed from the final release of the game. It's only really sought after because it's a PC version of a Pokemon game without an emulator. Still pretty cool. The game appears to have disappeared after it was taken offline. Speaking of online games, now we get to the Pokemon-themed games from the websites. Throughout the years, the Pokemon website has been the host of many Flash-based games. While I won't sit here and cover every single individual game, as there are a lot of them, I will say that some of the alleged games have been mirrored and made available elsewhere. Other games haven't been so lucky, and fans have been clamoring for someone out there to have it on their PC and upload mirrors of the games themselves. As I said before, Pokemon is a massive franchise, and we're just barely scratching the surface. There is so much to talk about that I'm going to have to make at least 2 more videos covering lost and unreleased content of the Pokemon games. Though I'm probably not going to do it this month. I will eventually get around to it though. Pokemon is a classic beloved series, and you can't blame its fanbase for being so into getting their hands on every piece of gameplay elements that they possibly can. For many, Pokemon was a significant part of their childhoods, as it was mine. And that's enough to keep anyone interested. That about does it for today. Join us next time when Daikate requests that I cover a video game with a fairly horrifying premise and title. Actually, I might just have Trey cover that one. See you later. Do you really think you can get away with it that easily, shoegazer? I hate you. Every single bit and piece of my fabric hates you. After I'm done with you, you will not be able to get rid of the Nazis. Hey guys, as you see, I do these videos pretty frequently. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment on the video if you want to see more videos similar to this one. Also, be sure to watch our music review show, 2 Beats Plus. It's coming back in June, so you might as well catch up on some of your Season 1 episodes. And if you haven't seen it or heard of it, shame on you! Check it out, man, it's pretty cool. At least I say so. And of course I say so because this is a shameless self-plug. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.